let's start here. Let's start with Terry Bussey, five-star athletes, played quarterback, safety, wide receiver, whatever you wanted him to play in high school. It kind of it's coming down to kind of three teams right now. I know the graphic has LSU, A&M. I believe Georgia's also in the mix here as well. And I'm the A&M guy, and I should know these things better. But I'm gonna start with you, Jason. One, where do you think Terry Bussey lands in 2 days? Two, what would that mean to that team?
Well, starting with Terry Bussey, the player, I mean, this is a guy that can play so many different positions, but at the end of the day, get him on campus. You'll figure out the rest of that when it shakes out. It's a guy that on the track time is posting a 10.6 in the 100 meters. So absolute burners, crazy movement skills. You talked about it. I mean, he plays quarterback, he plays defensive back, he plays wide receiver. I think he's going to be an elite wide receiver at the college football level. Now, talking about where he's going to end up, I ain't ever going to count out Kirby Smart and the Georgia Bulldogs. Like, these guys go hard on the recruiting trail. There's both of these teams, LSU and Texas A&M, a lot of momentum. Obviously committed to Texas A&M right now. I know LSU is making a push. I'm not going to pretend like I'm an insider on the recruiting trail, but if I were to place a crystal ball, if you will, it's probably going to be Texas A&M, right? He was on campus. I think Mike Elko is really selling a lot of these guys on the future of this program. I was a massive fan of the Mike Elko hire. So I'm leaning Texas A&M, staying in the state of Texas. But it does really sound like this one is kind of neck and neck with the Aggies and LSU kind of going down the stretch here.
CD, I want to hear the same from you. Well, as an A&M fan, I would like to hear you say that he is going to Texas A&M, but where do you think he's going, and what kind of impact do you think that he will have on a team when he gets there?
Yeah, he is a tremendous talent. Obviously, you mentioned the track times, the football acumens. He was a three-sport guy, football, track, and basketball. Yeah, he's a dynamic player in all three phases. Special teams early on for sure, but also offensively, for A&M, I think they're more so seeing him as a wide receiver, and I think LSU and Georgia, from what I've heard, think of him more as a safety. Regardless, though, like you said, get him on campus, figure out everything else after that. Like that's a good problem to have. Yeah, I think this is a huge, recruitment battle for Mike Elko. I think more than Brian Kelly and Kirby Smart. Those guys are two veteran, established guys in their programs. Both of their classes are pretty darn good at the high school level as it is. And he's an in-state guy for A&M. We talked about, we'll talk about later how important the Ryan Williams signing for Kalen DeBoer was. And I think this is a similar situation where Mike Elko comes into a job and, like some people, I guess, didn't think he was qualified for it. He's in over his heels. You can't win at A&M, all that good stuff. But if he can come in right away and seal this down and honor his commitment and sign on the dotted line for A&M, that would be massive for them, especially in a class where the wide receivers, you're losing Evan Stewart, but also some guys are maybe upperclassmen, but also he can get some early playing time there as well.
I think one other thing, one thing, obviously, special teams may like freak show with the football in his hands, but I think you mentioned Mike Elko and kind of getting that in-state recruiting going. I think the biggest question people had with the Mike Elko hire in College Station was, is he going to be able to recruit in the SEC? Is he going to be able to bang with guys like Texas and LSU on the recruiting trail? Like, what better message to send than landing the most coveted unsigned player right now from the state of Texas and Terry Bussey? Look, Mike Elko, proven player developer. The question is, can he get talent on campus? I think if he lands Terry Bussey, I think a lot of those questions kind of get subsided a little bit.
All right, let me bring up 2 points to y'all. So one, both A&M and LSU, the primary recruiters were defensive back coach. Defensive back coaches for Texas A&M and LSU were the primary recruiters for Terry Bussey. Does that foreshadow maybe the positional value in which he's going to play? I know you guys think he's going to be a receiver. I think A&M does need receivers, but also it's very telling in the transfer portal. They went and got 6, 7 guys in the defensive back room. So they're not set there at all in their minds, at least. That's why they're getting after all these guys. The other tidbit I want to bring up is Nick Scorden is Terry Bussey's cousin.
Did not know
How
that.
how important does that play into a role in this as well?
One, no doubt, that's massive. I had no clue. That one must have slipped through my notes, but that's obviously massive. Nick Scurden, as a Big Ten fan, like, you guys got a real one there. Going back to the position Terry Bussey plays, like, this is a guy that when I turn on the film, like, you want the football in this kid's hands. So I personally would love to see him as a wide receiver because I think that's where he's excelling the most. That being said, with the athletic traits that he has, kind of like what CD said, like this is going to be a ball player, regardless of what position he's playing. But when I go back and look at the impact that he has on a football game, this is a guy that I want the football in his hands with. So I'm leaning wide receiver. But again, if he does play defensive back, you're getting a damn good defensive back as well.
To add to that point, I do think you mentioned that the two guys that are recruiting him are defensive backs coach. Those are also two of the holdovers from the Jimbo Fisher era that did continue to recruit with him and developed a great relationship. On the offensive side of the ball, you have Holman Wiggins, a hire that we talked about, wide receiver coach coming over from Alabama, who was his primary recruiter at Alabama, who was also heavily interested in Terry Bussey. So you got three guys there with major connections. Again, more so reason why this is a massive recruitment for Mike Elko and his staff to close on.
Well, see, I think actually Holman Wiggins was secondary recruiter. Actually, Coleman Hutzler was the primary recruiter in that Saban staff, who he's now at Mississippi State or whatnot. But
Right.
so all the primary recruiters are DBs coaches, and then you'd have Holman Wiggins in there. I don't know. I feel really weird about this. What he's actually going to play in college. Again, you've said it, Jason. He can play anything. If you turn on his high school tape, it is absurd. It is freakish. It is freakish. At quarterback. He plays quarterback. Yeah. And he's blowing out dudes. Now, what was it? 4A at Timpson. So it's not 6A, but gosh, he was absurd. So I'm looking forward to this.
I do want to ask a question for you, Jason, or Matthew, whoever wants to answer this. So I guess not a big deal, but a note that I saw that was kind of interesting that piqued my interest was because of the coaching change from Jimbo Fisher to Mike Elko, Texas A&M does get a second official visit, which he was just able to use in this January. How much big of a difference is that versus an unofficial visit, or what's the difference there? Like, does that play a factor in and all that good stuff? Because he was at LSU for an unofficial, but it was also an A&M for an official visit. What's the difference in that for our viewers?
So from my understanding, and I wouldn't say I'm an expert on this, but an official visit, you get a lot more kind of funded from the school. And more importantly, like you can do a lot more things. I know for unofficial visits now, and this is, again, I wouldn't quote me word for word on this, but my understanding is unofficial visits, no photo shoots, a lot less kind of restrictions on some of the things you can do on campus. And then the official visits, it's kind of in all systems go in terms of the resources that you can employ. And I didn't know that they got a second official visit with Terry Bussey. No doubt in my mind, that certainly helps their case in this recruitment coming down the stretch.